I'm Maia Rodriguez.
And I'm Matt Snyder.
And welcome to Evernight the Musical Behind the Scenes.
We wanted to take this opportunity to get a brief synopsis about the musical, Maia.
Evernight is a dark fairy tale set to music, originally a musical narration, but it's at heart a love story, and it's about a young girl who journeys across a dark and unforgiving world to rescue the man she loves. This is a world that's cursed to remain forever in darkness, and along the way in her journey she meets a skeptical little fox and a band of merry river pirates. Well, it was actually a story for my daughter, who is now 2.5 years old. And it was just meant to be a fairy tale, a musical narration on album form. And it grew into something much bigger than that. And my hope is that it continues to grow.
The more and more that me and Maia talked about the project, the more we thought that it could evolve farther than just a audiobook. So one of my first suggestions is that we would take it into like an illustrated children's book along with a CD, and then it eventually, our conversations continued and evolved, and then we thought maybe, well, we should turn this into a children's theater piece and take it around to local elementary schools and see if we could shop it out that way. And then the more that we talked about it, it became more and more apparent that there was a bigger story here and a larger production, and then that kind of evolved into those conversations of, hey, this is really a stage musical and should be presented that way. And I think that's kind of where we got to now. And then of course with David Schultz, who is the producer at the Star Theater, and got the phone call from David about a year ago, and that's kind of where everything launched off. He gave us a call, gave Maia a call, said that he wanted us to come down to Oceanside and launch this original musical. It's pretty exciting. So Maia, how would you describe the sound of this musical?
I sort of combine it as New Broadway, but there's a heavy Celtic influence and there's a heavy Japanese influence. I'm very interested in world music. I'm very interested in music that switches back and forth between major and minor, so you're going to find a lot of that, and that, to me, that creates a very whimsical sound. But all of the females in the show, it's a very female-heavy show, have really powerful songs. Even the female lead, Bryony.
How do you think that you were inspired? I think the Asian influence in there is one of the things that intrigues me the most about the music. Like, even despite the story, that element seems to really be prominent, and it was one of the things that drew me to the music in the first place. Where do you think you came up with that, or where did that come from? Just from...
That's a good question. I spent a year living in Japan, working for Tokyo Disney Sea out there, and in that time I fell in love with anything taiko, anything shamisen, any sort of Japanese sound. I found it very intriguing, and it's interesting because I know that you have family ties to the Japanese culture as well, and it really spoke to both of us.
Yeah. Okay, we just want to talk about the character involvement. Let's talk about some of those characters, Maia. Let's start with Bryony, who's our main character on the show. How did you come up with that?
Bryony. Who is Bryony?
Who is Bryony?
Bryony is the daughter of a laborer. She spent her entire life in the fields. She's never bought a single pair of shoes. She's a young, small girl, but she has a strength, not just a physical strength about her, but an outward strength about her. Strength is interesting to me, and strong female heroines that may not look as though they have that inner strength, but they really do have that, are interesting to me. And this is a girl who ends up making a bad choice in the beginning of the musical, who spends the rest of the musical trying to remedy that.
And Jaden?
Jaden is a soldier who is of a much higher class than Bryony. So we touch upon briefly the difference in their class, and we have a role reversal where it's, instead of the woman being captured and it's the man going to rescue her, in fact, it's the reverse of that. It's the man, Jaden, gets captured by this queen, and then we end up spending the rest of the musical trying to find him.
And that queen is...
Queen Moraid. She's so dark and evil and sinister. The queen, the fairy queen, Moraid is her name, is an integral part to the story because it is her curse that has cast this whole world into darkness. And in the beginning of the musical, she rides in on a moonlit dragon, and she strikes a bargain with Bryony. And the bargain, despite what Bridie doesn't understand this, but the bargain ends up being Jaden, and Moraid steals Jaden for herself.
And how about Master Show?
Master Show is a skeptical fox who walks on 2 feet and has a white button-down shirt, and he represents friendship.
Very cool. You don't want to say too much about him.
I think he is probably everybody's favorite character.
Sure,
maybe that's assuming, but everybody that listens to Master Show's piece and who he is, and he commonly he'll speak in riddles. He has a slight Japanese accent, but he seems to be the master of the forest. He's like a Tom Bombadil, if anybody knows Tom Bombadil from Tolkien. You should. If you don't, go read Tolkien. It's very good.
How about the River Pirates, last but not least?
The River Pirates. There are 6 merry river pirates. There's the captain, Firefly Jane, who is an enormous woman with a big red coat and a big red hat. And she enjoys barking orders. And she commonly talks about her husband in the past tense. But her husband is always standing right behind her, and he's just hard of hearing. I can hear you, woman. And he has a little, what do you call those? He tries to listen to a little hearing horn.
It has a word, there's a name for that. I don't know what it is right now.
And he's a little bit hard of hearing, but he's very charming. And there's Nefarious, the resident drunk, who always has a one-liner for everything. Hollyhock, the ship's cook. She doesn't have a weapon, but she does carry a spatula and a wooden spoon, so she can always draw them.
Mean with a wooden spoon.
Yeah. Really mean. She's a terrible cook. And then there's Thousand Summers, who falls in love with his own image every time he sees it in the river, so they actually steer this barge into the riverbanks. They don't really get anywhere. And I should mention it's a barge that they're on, not a ship, because they don't actually know anything about sailing.
And thus, River Pirates, right?
Princess Moonlight, the last one,
Right.
The gunner, and she only has one eye, and so she has no depth perception. So I don't know why they give her a gun, but whenever they do, everybody has to duck.